Hey, there we go. It is working, I think. Let me make sure. Yeah, good. All right, it's been a while. It's brew day. So today we are starting on the Rhubarb Strawberry that we've made previously, changing the recipe up a little bit. I looked at my ingredients list and I don't have quite the right ingredients to make a Nordic ale. So we're going to do just a straight up plain old North American lager, and then we're going to add rhubarb and strawberry to it later after it's done fermenting. I don't think it's going to be a big change. When you do sort of these very fruit forward beers, the vessel in which you use to make the beer, it's almost irrelevant. You just want to make sure, it's a nice, smooth, mild beer that you use. You don't want to use anything too hoppy or too crazy as sort of your base beer. You just need something smooth and easy drinking, which is what we're going to do today. So this is just going to be straight up about 11 pounds of 2-row pale malt. Pale malt is pretty much the most basic of all beer making malts. There's sort of the base grains and then sort of what they call adjunct. So typically adjuncts are things like Munich grain and stuff like that. So it is just little add-ons that you use and typically not in large quantities. So for instance, if I was to make a Pilsner right now, I would do mostly German Pils and then a little bag of Munich in there as well. It just kind of adds that little extra bit of flavor. But in this case, we're doing just a good old basic beer. So we'll just start with 11 pounds of 2-row. When you're doing the mash, which is what this part of the beer making is, that's simply kind of like making tea. So we have the temperature of the water sitting at about 170 degrees. Anything between 160 Fahrenheit and 180 is kind of the optimal level. You don't want it to boil at this point because then you'll boil the grain and potentially burn the grain, which makes off flavors. So we don't want that. So this is just my false bottom, kind of like a brew bag that goes in there. So basically all the grain goes down into the false bottom, and then when we're done this stage, I'll be able to lift up. All the extra water and stuff goes through the bottom, and then I can take the grain out. All right. The water level in there is at about 4 gallons. This batch is going to be a 6-gallon batch. The reason why I start with 4 instead of cranking it up is by putting heavy stuff in, it's going to displace the water and of course make the water rise above the 4-gallon level. Even though this thing does 8, I always like to put less water than more, because if you have too much water and you put heavy stuff into it, it boils over. Don't want to do that. My version of beer making is not an exact science. Kind of professional brewmasters and a lot of people they really like to be very specific on things, very specific temperatures, very specific amounts of time, very specific ingredients. And that's okay too. I just like making good beer, and I like it to be easy. That's why I stream this. I want to show everybody how easy making just good beer is. So that was about, I don't know, two-ish kilograms. Maybe not quite. Give that a good mix. Especially when you're just using one ingredient. It doesn't have to be exact. So 2-ish kilograms, 4-ish pounds. Need a cutting tool of some sort. I always forget to bring the scissors, so then I end up using like a really dull cocktail knife. And then probably make a mess everywhere. But we're going with it anyway, because that's what we do. I might have to go get scissors regardless. Bag. It's pretty freaking sturdy. Oh, there we go. That should be good enough. So, more 2-row pail. In we go. Being very careful with my pour, I have a little spout that goes down to the bottom, so I'm just trying to be careful not to get any grain in the little water spout. Just gonna stir it up a little bit. We want to make sure no dough balls form or anything like that in here. Looks like I probably could use a little bit more water in here, which is okay. I'll just go get some hot water in the other room and we'll pour it on top. Let's see what else we got. So, when I was originally talking about adjuncts, I have some of this. It's called Crystal 60. A while being like probably a year ago, we decided to make a amber ale, and I experimented with Crystal 60. Crystal 60 is very malty, so when you have an amber ale, you kind of want that little bit of malty sort of taste and mouthfeel. I didn't realize it was as strong as it is, so I put more than I probably needed. And I mean, the beer turned out really good, but it ended up tasting like coffee. So there was so much caramel in there, it had a very coffee-forward taste. Coffee lager's delicious. I love coffee lager. So it was a happy mistake, and I called it not a coffee lager, because there was no coffee beans, caffeine, anything in it, but it tasted just like coffee. So good. So I need to get some scissors. We need to get some more water. I'll be right back. Scissors? The reason I need scissors is we're only sitting at about 8 pounds of grain. I want about 11, just because even though we're going to add a lot of fruit to this, I still want it to be a beer. So we're going to make sure it tastes like beer. So we'll just throw a little bit of Pilsner malt in here. So I guess it's not a straight up American lager at this point. Kind of going to be a little bit of a hybrid, but let me tell you, it's going to taste mighty fine. I guarantee it. All right. So we've got 8 pounds of 2-row, 2-ish pounds of Pilsner malt. Going to be straight up easy drinking lager. Now we need to put a little bit more water in there. I'm going to go get some hot stuff in my bucket, and I'll be right back. When I originally heat things up, I always heat it up a little hotter than it needs to be, because by the time you put the grain in, and usually I add a little bit more water, even though it's hot water, the temperature does drop. So right now it's sitting at 170 degrees, 160 is optimal. So when I add this water, I suspect it's going to be down to 160. Like I say, typically when I make beer, it's a little loosey-goosey. I like that. If I make something that I really like, I might be very specific the next time to try and improve on it. But I also get really tired of making the same beer over and over again, so I tend to float around quite a bit. All right, that's looking pretty darn good, boys and girls. Show you what's going on here. It's not that exciting, but just so everybody can see. Ooh, look at that. We're making green tea right now, pretty much. Delicious. So now, verify temperature and set our timer. What this is just a simple pump that cycles liquid from the bottom, pours it out. We use this as kind of a stirring mechanism and stuff, make sure all of the grain and water is distributed, you know, to really try and extract all the flavor we can out of this grain. This is the reason why this thing has a false bottom, and I didn't want to get any additional water in the little tube, is because the pump pulls liquid from the bottom and cycles it. We don't want hard grain getting in the pump system because that's what ruins it. Who's out there? Why is everybody so quiet? What's going on here? I know it's been a while since I've done a beer stream, so you know, I don't expect as many people as there used to be coming in. But yeah, life was busy over the summer. I made one batch of beer over the summer, and I just did that offline because my girlfriend wanted to join me in doing it, and she's a little camera shy, so we just did it together off stream. And that was just a standard lager, which we'll have here as well. I'm going to a Halloween party next weekend, so I've got a fridge full of beer, and the reason I haven't made any is because I can't drink it all myself that fast. So I'm going to a party. I'm going to bring a full 24 flat case with me and hopefully clear up some of this lager and make room for our delicious rhubarb beer. So all we've done so far, we've put about 5 gallons of water in there, heated it up to about 175 degrees. The ideal temperature for a mash is between 160 and 180. I go more down to 160, so I heated it up to, you know, in the 170s, just because the grain will reduce the temperature as well as adding water will reduce temperature. So it's kind of hanging out just below 170 right now, which is pretty good. Making green tea. You know, people you know, think, well, you know, why is beer made out of grain? It's flavorless and stuff like that. People don't actually know or understand that grain has flavor to it. You know, I mean, we like bread, right? So when this is done sort of steeping, as I call it, like tea, you get this really sort of sweet bread-like smell around the house, which smells really good. It smells sweet too because there's actually lots of sugar in grain. by having it at a higher temperature here, we're using heat to extract sugars and the underlying flavor out of the grain. Because when we add yeast at the last step, yeast love sugar. Yeast eats sugar. It's fuel. We need sugar to make alcohol and also the byproduct CO2, which we use in carbonation of the beer. The spent grain, so what's left over here, is kind of a superfood at that point. As humans, we don't find it super desirable because all the sugar that we all love is out of it. However, you know, there's some crafty bakers and stuff out there who can kind of do a spent grain bread or, you know, some baked goods. And it actually tastes quite good. I've had a spent grain bread loaf before, and it kind of tastes like rye bread. So it's, you know, darker, you know, not quite as sweet as, you know, white bread or whatnot, but it's really good. I like it better in rye bread, really. Another thing I have is I actually have some gourmet mustard that was made with spent grain from a brewery. That tastes sort of really good. You know how there's the little mustard bits, like in a nice mustard, like mustard stones or mustard seeds. Kind of has that feel to it. Super good. The spent grain sort of traps all that mustard flavor in it. So when you get kind of a little bit of spent grain in your bite, it's kind of like a super bite. And animals, it's really good for animals. A lot of the breweries, specifically in my area, they give away, I'm pretty sure they give it away still and don't sell it, to farms. So like pigs, chickens, roosters, you know, all of them. Spent grain is a really healthy food because there's not much sugar left and there's lots of nutrients. So they usually take that. My mom likes making dog treats with my spent grain. It's very important that it's only spent grain and not before we put hops in it. Not that you ever would at this point. Maybe somebody might, I don't know, to experiment. But hops are considered a toxic product towards most animals. So you don't want to, you know, dogs don't deal well with hops. I mean, humans, it's technically toxic to us too. If you took like 2 huge handfuls of hop pellets and ate them, you're going to have a really bad time. But of course, animals are smaller than us, so smaller traces will, you know, affect them more than us. So yeah, if it's just straight up spent grain, you know, for animals, it's fantastic. Spent grain dog treats are perfect. My mom uses spent grain and pumpkin, and I bought her a little, like George Foreman-y press that makes like in the shape of little dog bones, and she makes it for dogs, and it's like a superfood for them. It's so healthy and so good. Now, we can't make beer without drinking beer, right? So, we'll start with just a general lager. Made this lager with the girlfriend off stream, so this wasn't my last video. The next beer we'll have is from my last video. The funny part about that one is I think I added too many hops to it. And the hops I added weren't the type of hops that you really want when you're making a very hoppy beer. So, you know, the overall flavor at the end wasn't really what I wanted it to be. I don't mind a hoppy, more bittery beer. I'm fine with that. But, you know, I just wasn't jiving with it. So I started experimenting because I had like 60 bottles of it. Added maybe some like lime margarita mix to it, or, you know, some raspberry daiquiri stuff, you know, just to try and sort of augment the flavor a little bit, you know, enhance it. You know, when it comes to IPAs and stuff, people do grapefruit IPAs and, you know, all sorts of different fruity IPAs. So just because it's bitter doesn't mean you can't, you know, add a fruit to it and make it taste good. But what I found was adding like this much orange juice. So not even as much as I thought I would need, but just like a literal splash of orange juice into the bottom of the cup and then pouring this beer into it is absolutely fantastic. Beermosas are a thing. A lot of sort of trendy pubs do beermosas for brunch and stuff like that. So it's just orange juice and beer. However, this beer, being the little hoppier it is and just whatever flavor profile it had, adding the orange juice to it made it taste so good. Like so good. I was telling Deanna that like I actually crave it. You know, this lager is good, but it's just normal beer. There's nothing exciting about it. The weird, crazy hoppy beer with the orange juice is exciting because it's so different tasting, so good. I probably should get a cup so I can pour this out. Not pour it out. Pour it into the cup so everybody watching can kind of see what homebrew looks like. Honestly, when I've given some friends some of my homebrew and stuff, you know, they'll look at it and be like, "You made this at home?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Well, that's not what I thought that would look like. I'm like, "What do you think it's supposed to look like? You know, is it supposed to look like skunky swill? Like, I don't know. You know, you may have had a bad experience with that before." Oh, there's Steve. Thanks for stopping by, Steve. I'll be right back. All right. Let's pour this bad boy. Oh my goodness. One thing I've noticed about my last two batches, they've been very, very carbonated. I don't know fully why. The only thing I can think of is maybe the temperature in which I bottled everything was very favorable for the yeast to interact with the sugar, and it produced a lot of CO2. Like, look at that. That wasn't a shitty pour either. My goodness. All right, well, we'll let that sit for a little bit and we'll continue on. Oh, I didn't set my timer. But I started the stream 22 minutes ago, and we pretty much added the ingredients right then. So we'll call it 18 minutes ago. Hey Google, set a timer for 12 minutes.
12 minutes.
So when we're doing the mash, typically it's about 30 minutes. Some people do it longer, some people do it less. You know, it's all about personal preference and choices. I like making things a little faster than a little slower. You know, a lot of breweries or beer making kits and stuff, they come up with the general cheat sheets. So these are sort of like, if you're making the most basic beer, these are sort of the times and temperatures you do it at. And I haven't really deviated from that too much. I'm not even that exact. You know, it's like, it says 160, 170 is fine by me. Like I say, I've never made a bad beer. And you know, if you sweat the details, it's such an onerous task doing all of this stuff. And you're like, oh my God, I gotta set my watch for 8 minutes and I gotta make sure it's this temperature and that. No, man. You're just gonna make good beer. Oh, I guess the mash is 20 minutes, so we're doing 30. Whatever, it's good. Get more flavor out of it, right? So I'm just gonna turn my pump on a little bit. You know, circulate the water a little, make sure we're getting all that flavor out of here. Okay, you can kind of start to see the beer at the bottom. Look at that nice color. If you're still there, Steve, Warren's had some of my beer, so he can vouch that it's not swill. Everybody I've given my stuff to is actually, who's come over or whatnot, has actually said it's pretty good. It's funny. big pile of my volleyball friend set. Um, they're not real beer drinkers. They like beer, but it's not really their thing. So one of the things they like to do is, they go on a big brewery tour, and they like having me around because it's what I do. Um, but they've tasted a lot of my stuff, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is so good," and all this stuff. And then I'm like, "Well, they're my friends, or they trying to be nice, I mean, that's what I would be if somebody gave me something, and I take it. I would be like, oh, this is great. I don't want to be that guy. But like sometimes I'm like, well, if it isn't that great or, whatever, I'd love feedback to see, you know, if what I'm doing is really good or not. I mean, I like it, but I'm also catering to my tastes when I make it. So, but we were at a wedding, and we're sitting drinking some sours at Barn Owl in Kelowna, and they're like, "Oh man, this isn't as good as yours." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I mean, like, thanks, but you don't have to say that." I'm like, I didn't think it was the best beer in the world. No, 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 it's so good, and all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm reluctant on feedback because I don't know if people are just being nice or whatnot, but they tell me it's good, so I'm doing something right. Really, this stuff ain't that hard. Especially when I made that sour on stream a while ago. I used that special yeast that did all the work for me. So the breweries, they're doing way more complex stuff than I'm doing. I'm using cheese, but everything seems to taste pretty good. So you say I'm doing something right. Um, this rhubarb beer we're making. So my original idea for this came from a brewery in Nelson called Torchlight. I had it at Jackknife in Kelowna over some pizza, and it was called the Rhubarbarian. Their can is quite excellent as well. It's a Care Bear holding an axe and a sword and a decapitated head over a pile of bodies. And it's Rhubarb Strawberry Raspberry Nordic Ale. And it's super good. It's really, really good. So I kind of wanted to make my own variation of that. So that's what I've been doing. This is going to be the third time I've done a rhubarb beer of some sort. I did a rhubarb strawberry, or a rhubarb raspberry, then a rhubarb strawberry, and I like the rhubarb strawberry a little bit better. So that's what I'm doing again this time. I could do a rhubarb strawberry raspberry like the rhubarbarian, but I don't want to like completely clone them. I want to kind of add a little bit of my own spin to it. I want to be a little bit unique. And yeah, Torchlight is awesome. The Noctis was my girlfriend's sort of gateway into sours. She was never a beer drinker at all. She likes ciders. But a long time ago, I think she was at the Kelowna Beer Fest before we met. And she had the Noctis from Torchlight. And she's like, "Oh my God, beer can taste like this?" Because this is really the first sour she's ever had. So that became her sort of nostalgic favorite. Definitely have some in the fridge here. But the funny part is, now that she's sort of been exposed to a huge pile of sours, because I sort of curate them for her everywhere we go, we actually went to Nelson for a weekend, and we went to Torchlight, and she got the Noctis on tap, and she's drinking, and she's like, this isn't actually as good as I remember it to be. So she was a little bummed at that, just because we've had so many over the last 3 years. Hundreds of beers. Well, I guess I've had hundreds of beers. She's probably had 100 or 75 different sours over those 3 years. So it's not as special anymore. But we did have a good time there. Like, the beer was still good, and they had a few different ones on tap and stuff like that. That was fun. But that location is pretty awesome. I was there in person maybe over 10 years ago when they first started. I think they were in a different place back then, and that was like also one of the first breweries I ever went to. And it was pretty cool, but back then they were just doing like really dark, hoppy kind of beers, and it was fine. but it wasn't, super awesome. But it's nice to see now that they're doing a huge variety. There was a fruited pale ale of some sort, a fruited hazy pale they had that was super good. Um, which was the real first fruited hazy I've seen in BC. When we went to the States, we went down to Seattle in the summer. We stopped at a pile of places along the way, and it seems in the US, fruited hazy pale ales are like the fad right now. They're all over the place, and they're super good. Um, the best one I had was called Vampire Beach Party, and it was at a little brewery by Snoqualmie. I can't remember. Bend. That's the name. Bend, I think. Not Bend, Oregon, but Bend, Washington. Just before Snoqualmie, they had a brewery there, and it was really good. Oh, Driftwood. Yeah, I've been there. Been there. Um, I'm just trying to think in my head. There's a different one that I'm thinking. I've been to both of them, but Victoria. Ah, yes. Yes. I'm just Googling some stuff here. What's the other one? So yeah, I've been to Driftwood. It's right next door to an ice cream place that is absolutely... Longwood was the one I was thinking of in Nanaimo. I've been to Longwood. But yeah, Driftwood in Victoria, there's a ice cream shop next door across the street called Parlor. Not the same as our Parlor in Kelowna, but a different one. And there's a coffee roaster that has the upstairs of their building. And they made a deal with the coffee roaster. So every day they get fresh espresso from the coffee roaster and they grind it up and then they add it to their like creamy vanilla ice cream and you get like this fresh espresso ice cream. It's friggin' the best thing I've ever had, man. As far as ice cream goes, 1,000% the best ice cream I've ever had. I love Victoria beer culture. Everything is so close. Everything's 5 minutes away. I went with an ex-girlfriend a few years ago. Her friend lives there, and she took us around like to all the different breweries. We got absolutely tanked, and it was so good. It's like Phillips, of course, is a good place to visit down there as well. Pretty staple. Swans, which is a super old pub. They do a raspberry ale there, which is so good. There's a few I haven't been to. There's a French-based brewery there downtown by the bridge that looks really cool. I can't remember what the name of it is. It's got a weirdish name. Hoynes was a really good brewery. Their Pilsner at Hoyne is my favorite ever. Lighthouse Coffee Lager, super good. Phillips is where I bought the spent grain bread. That was really cool. Spinnaker's makes the best cider I've ever had. It's like Strongbow on crack. Like, it's that style, very dry, but it blows Strongbow out of the water. It is so good. And they only sell it in Victoria. They don't export it anywhere, which sucks because it's so good. What can I find? The Francophone brewery there. It's got like man, I'm drawing a blank. Oh yeah, love the Hoyne. I was at oh, there we go. Stop. I was at the Sticky Wicket playing beach volleyball on the roof, and I asked for a beer, and they brought me that, and I drank it. I'm like, what is this? Where'd you get this? And they're like, oh, it's from Hoyne. It's just down the street. So I made sure I went and had that after. There we go. So now you can see. Just a straight up delicious lager. 30-minute marker. I need to get a towel because it's going to get messy. It's crazy what a hiatus from Twitch can do. Because I haven't made beer in a few months on stream, like, I used to have like 20 minimum viewers, and it's definitely not that anymore. It's crazy how competitive Twitch is. And there's 3 people on Twitch now who make beer. I was the first. There's a nice dude, Central US, that does it, but I think now he basically just goes for runs on his channel. It's very weird. And then there's another guy I saw was doing it. I'd love one day to do a collab with one of those guys remotely where we're both making the same beer at the same time and we like split stream it. It would be really cool. Okay. So this is the hardest part of the whole deal, is lifting the basket, because that's where messes come from. We're going to crank this now and start bringing it up to a boil, because this is the longest part of the whole process, is getting it from 160 degrees to boiling. It seems to take like 20 minutes, so we'll start that process early. I have to go get my old short man step stool to put here so I can lift this up safely. I'll be right back. All right. So this is just a container with a false bottom. We need to start extracting all that water out of the grain and prepping for the boil. This is the hardest part of the whole thing, because if you drop it and make a mess, it sucks. It sucks so hard. There. This mash is the stickiest thing in the world to clean up. It totally sucks. But so far, we have not made a mess. So we will check it out, see what's going on. Delicious grain. All the water trickling out of the bottom into the pot. Brewzilla, if you're watching, which you're not, but let's say you were, the only thing I would change on this device is I want to see what the water level is on the outside. Because when this is on top, I can't see what the water level is. Yes, I could remove it from there, but if I need to add more water, I like to do something called sparging, which is inserting the water through the grain and letting it trickle through, because we want to extract all of the flavor out of that grain we can. If I take that off and add water, you're just diluting it. Whereas if you do it through the top and let it go through, you're actually extracting flavor out as well. And yeah, I should have done 1 or 2 of these over the summer. I missed it too. I still stream like Overwatch and stuff like that, but this is my favorite stream, and this seems to be where I get all the viewers. Like, it's crazy to think, like maybe 6 years ago, I was pulling 75 to 150. I think was my top view count. Doing some games. Typically, when I played Black Week, I could get it up to 40, 50. Every once in a while, it would peak about 75, and then I started playing a game called Hold Fast. I just happened to have a vacation day when the game came out, so I was the first streamer playing it. So people who were curious about seeing it on Twitch's top 10s, they would go to Twitch to see what the game was about, and they'd find me. So I had like 150 people at that time, and I made, I started interacting with a few of the 500 view count streamers, which was really cool. But then, after it just kind of, I wasn't able to keep up a very consistent schedule, so it kind of started going down. But just recently, I started playing Battlefield 2042 as well. And that one, surprisingly, a lot of viewers came through. I think every stream I did that, I had like 20 to 30 unique visitors, which is pretty high. Unfortunately, the game isn't the funnest in the world, so I kind of don't play it all the time. And then Overwatch 2, everybody and their dog is playing Overwatch right now, so I kind of get diluted out. But that's definitely my game of the minute is Overwatch. But I miss those days of having, 75 people around and stuff, a consistent viewer base. It was really fun. That point in my life too, I was dealing with a bad relationship and stuff, so it was like a really nice sort of coping mechanism as well, when you feel a little lonely, but yet you can come on and there's, a ton of people chatting with you and, being social. It was a good experience. All right. So, to recap what we've done so far, we added about 10-ish pounds of grain, 8.5-ish two-row pale, and the rest Pilsner malt. We let the tea steep for 30 minutes, and now we've lifted it up, let all that water and flavor go back down, and we're bringing it to a boil. I still hear it dribbling. After it's done dribbling, what we'll do is I will get a garbage bag and a garbage can, and I'll very carefully get the spent grain into the garbage can, hopefully without dropping it all over my floor, because that would suck. And then once it boils, we'll get to do some more beer stuff. The device I'm using is a Brewzilla. If you're getting into beer making, you might not want to spend very much money, and that's okay. You can buy sort of a very cheap beer making kit that employs just a kettle pot. Which I still have. Nothing exciting here, just a good old pot. And then you can buy beer kits that use something called malt extract, which instead of using a whole physical grain like I have there, uses like a concentrated syrup instead. That way you don't need to worry about grain bags and dealing with grain and all that stuff. Typically, it would just be a container like this, full of this really sort of syrupy tar, that when instead of steeping grain, at that point you just literally pour the syrup in. There's something called DME as well, which is dried malt extract, which is kind of the same idea as this, only completely dry. So it's a powder that you stir in. People seem to like the extract better, the liquid extract better. I do too. Then there's something called a partial mash, which is a mix between all grain and the extract. So it's the liquid extract and then a little tiny sort of grain sock that you put like a big ball of grain in just to get that kind of extra grainy flavor in there. So you can make 5 gallons of beer with nothing more than a pot which makes it really cheap. Thanks for stopping by, Kier. I'll let you know how things go for sure. I appreciate using me as background noise. The other thing you could do with a pot like that is you can get something called a brew in a bag, which is like a big muslin sack that you line it with and you put a whole ton of grain in and you make beer just like we're doing here, only that way. The disadvantage of that is at this stage, I'm letting gravity do the work to get all the water out. If you're using the grain bag, you literally lift that, 20 pound wet sack up and you have to hold it there to get the water out. Otherwise, you're losing a lot of flavor. So that kind of sucks. If you want to get into a little more industrious thing like this, it comes on sale for $400 or less. It's really not that expensive. Especially since if you just wanted to make beer, like nothing fancy, nothing fruited or anything like that, you could make 55 bottles of beer for $30. Maybe even a little less than 30, depending what you're doing. So super cheap, I've made, 30, 40 batches of beer since I got into beer making. Especially since a 24 pack of Budweiser or whatever is $40 now. You recoup the cost of the nice beer making equipment real fast. I'm sure you're pouring man hours or labor hours into the making of it, but it's enjoyable. And I devote a full 3 hours to this craft because I'm streaming, so I got to be here and present the whole time. But if you're just doing this at home, you can have it on your patio, in your garage, wherever, even in your kitchen, really. You don't have to pay attention to it the whole time. I'm doing 5 minutes of labor here, 5 minutes of labor there, but the rest is just waiting around. So you don't really have to devote a lot of time. You spend about maybe 20 to 30 minutes actively doing things, and the rest is just wait time. Honestly, the hardest part of this whole thing is the cleanup. That's one of the reasons why doing the malt extract in the pot was an advantage at the time. It was so easy to clean up. It took like 5 minutes to clean up. So if you just wanted to make beer that tastes good very cheaply, doing the whole pot and the extract thing, the beer tasted delicious. It was really good, and it's super easy to clean up. Doesn't take up any space at all. You need a pot, right? A pot and like 2 buckets like that. And that's all the space you need for it. So, beer making is not hard. It's cheap. I don't know why more people don't do it. It all tastes good now. Maybe a lot of the boomery type people are, have PTSD from, Uncle Larry's bathtub beer or whatever he made in the 80s or whatever that tasted like Colt 45 or whatever it is, just gross stuff. Almost done. So we've already got the temperature up to 175. We need to get it to 200 to boil. Like I say, this is the slowest part of the whole thing. Gonna go get my garbage bag, add my garbage can. I'm also trying to figure out if I get more viewers in the food and drink channel, or if I get more viewers in just chatting. So hard to tell. Maybe I might just change, because I technically fall into both categories. I'm going to switch to the other one and see if we get any more. See how she goes. Usually I have my garbage bags, garbage cans, all my tools and everything ready, but I was actually in a meeting with Connor at the end of the day. So he's the reason I wasn't fully prepared. I just realized my old bag of grain is still in this garbage can. I never come in the backyard, so I never realized that I didn't empty it, but that's fine. Just makes the garbage can extra heavy, which is perfect because I love carrying that up the stairs. All right. Put it as close as possible. This is the part I hate the most out of the whole thing. Sucks. How hot's that? I know what I'll do. I gotta, yeah. I wonder if I can get a sponsorship with Of Glove. Always trying to make things easier. Just getting all the extra water out. That's actually sturdy. I like that. We don't want to waste any of that flavor. I mean, we're not impeding the water from boiling either, so we're just taking our time. Man, all my friends playing Overwatch right now, and I'm jonesing. Jonesing so hard to play, but we got beer to make. All right. It's probably easier going that way. Yes. A little drip. That's not too bad, actually. That's reasonable. Little tiny drip on the side. The part that's crazy is now that's going to be like sticky for 3 weeks. But it saves me having to lift this up twice to get everything out. So I'm going to treat that as a success. A big success. A great success. All right. Now to make a mental note to actually take this out on garbage day, which I'm probably not going to remember. It's nice having a door right there. All right. Let's take a peek here. You can see what we got going on. Delicious, delicious, delicious. So that sort of foam is just the chemical reaction as it gets up to boiling. It's all that sugar. Delicious. So we're just sitting at about the 5-gallon level for water. So we're about right. I'm probably going to just get a little bit more hot water just to top it up just a little bit, because between now and putting it in the fermenter, you know, we're going to lose a little bit. I probably should have poured it over to sparge, but I'm not adding much water in here at all. So we don't have to worry about diluting the flavor. Ideally, I like to make 6 gallons of beer, but also by adding a ton of fruit at the next stage, that's going to increase the overall volume as well. So I'm not really adding too much more water to things. All right, we got a little bit of time. If there's anybody left in here, if there's any questions anybody has, beer related or other, I can answer them. Otherwise, I'll just politely surf the internet for a few minutes. Drink some beer. I understand I'm a very good background noise for a lot of people. So if they're kind of doing their own thing too, that's pretty cool. I definitely don't mind being background noise. Very nice, sweet grain smell we got going on. Super delicious. Wish I could eat that taste. Oh, I didn't put my bags in the garbage. Bah. There. Nice and clean-ish. Now I want to make some Pilsner after talking about wine. You know, it's funny. A local brewery for Kelowna Beer Week did a private event for homebrewers, and he did 3 categories at Jackknife, and the winners got to do a beer with him. And I planned very poorly. I didn't want to enter this, my basic lager, because it's just a beer. There's nothing exciting about it at all. It's good. It's good. But, you know, how do you win a contest with just a basic beer? You don't. But I thought about it after my happy mistake making the Beermosa beer. I could have easily opened the bottles, added that little splash of orange juice, and resealed them up, and it would totally be legit because everything was made by me still. Or instead of orange juice, I could have literally went and got an actual orange, you know, and pureed it or whatever and strained it through. I could have tried a few different things with my existing beer, and I bet you that would have been pretty close to winning because or if not win, because it's such a unique, awesome, tasty flavor. And then the other thing, I was at my girlfriend's house, and she's like, "Hey, you got these 2 bottles of beer here of yours that you haven't drank." Then I was trying to remember, I'm like, which batch was this? And they were from my Pilsner run we did on stream, 4 months ago or something like that. And I drank them, and I'm like, man, this is really good. I'm like, it's even better than when I originally made it. And it was a really, really, really good Pilsner. And then I realized after I drank the second one, I'm like, man, I could have just took one of these and submitted it too. Like, it was a really good Pilsner. But I drank the last 2, and then I didn't have any, so... that was wasted because it would have been really cool to be, you know, on his Instagram page and actually do a beer and have it show up in his place. I know Brad. I've curled with him before and stuff way in the past before he was a brewmaster. So it was a missed opportunity. I was pretty dumb on that. I should have did something for that. At least tried. If I didn't win, I didn't win, but at least I could say I tried. But I think my beer was good enough. Plus, as much as I love Brad and Jackknife, I mean, the pizza at Jackknife is by far the best pizza I've ever had, hands down. Their pizza is so freaking good. But, you know, I like his beer quite a bit, but, you know, my girlfriend doesn't really like going there for beer. She loves going there for pizza. But, you know, she's a sour and cider kind of person. So, you know, he does a lot of, like, hoppy, you know, weird sort of European style beers. And, you know, it doesn't really give her much to have because she doesn't like IPAs or, you know, anything darks, anything dark beer, anything like that. So, you know, for her, it's just a pizza place. And for me, I like the beer, but it's, you know, it would be so nice if he would do a little more sort of maybe fruit forward or sours or whatever, just to kind of give a little bit of a variety there. He's kind of, you know, he does a lot of sort of, I guess, a beer enthusiast beer, which is okay. It's totally fine having a, you know, brewery that's for beer people. But, you know, it's a little bit also of a missed opportunity for him to have, you know, a little more mainstream kind of thing, you know, for the non-beer drinkers to still enjoy things. I mean, you know, I have a lot of friends who aren't beer drinkers and stuff, and they say they're not beer drinkers, but I'm like, have you tried a sour? Have you tried this sour? You know, have you tried this? And they say no, and then I get them to try it, and they're like, this is beer? Yeah, this is beer. And then they're a fan after that, you know? Everybody's taste buds are different, and there's a lot of beers these days that don't taste like hoppy beer. They're just delicious fruit-forward beer, and that's cool. That's good. One of my girlfriend's friends, you know, is kind of like that too. And we were in Vancouver and we went to a few places, and, you know, I just introduced her to a whole bunch of weird sours and things like that, and she was really digging it. Like, we went to, I think, R&B in Vancouver, and we had a dill pickle sour. I mean, both her and my girlfriend love dill pickles, and this beer tasted exactly like a dill pickle. And she's like, "Oh my god, this is beer?" I'm like, yeah, you can. These days, like, you know, beer isn't just like this anymore. There's all sorts of cool things. We're almost boiling. Maybe I'll put the lid on. I should have put the lid on before. You have Twitch Prime and you have to watch ads? I don't think you're a subscriber though, Zap. The way it works is you only the person you're subscribed to now, you don't get ads for. Oh, there's Steel. Steel's in here too. Why did I not get any notifications on my stream? What's going on here? Steel, thank you for the follow. Shaking, buddy. What does Twitch call their like no ad thing? Like I bit the bullet and did. Oh, and there's Zap. Zap keeps her word, the subscriber. I don't know why it's not doing notifications here, but I saw my count went from 1 to 2. I appreciate that, Zap. Thank you. Yeah, Twitch Prime is you get one free sub a month that you can use on a person, and then you get no ads for that person, and they get a little bit of money from Uncle Jeff. But they have something called like Turbo or something that you can spend money and then you see no ads anywhere. I haven't resorted to that yet, but I did have to do YouTube Premium or whatever they call, because when I'm working and stuff, I've got my third screen up in the top just playing ambient stuff from YouTube, and the ads get me so annoyed, especially if I want to watch like a 30-second video or whatever, and you have to friggin' watch 2 minutes of ads to see if there's it drives me nuts. And also you get access to YouTube Music as well. Not that I'm a YouTube fanboy, but I used to pay for Spotify, which was $10 or whatever, and I'm like, well, YouTube Premium's $11, so I get all the music stuff that I would have with Spotify, and I don't have to watch ads on YouTube anymore. So I was like, sold. 100% in on that. You know, Spotify's algorithm is so good, though. Like, so good. I don't know what magic they use, but it's like I'll be in the truck driving, and I put on the random thing or whatever, and then it's like, hey, man, do you remember in high school in like 1999 and all that music you liked and you put on like burnt CDs and stuff? Yeah, you forgot about that? Here, let me play it all for you. And it's like I'm hearing all of these songs that like instantly I forgot about, but they trigger memories. And I'm like, how the fuck do you know this? Like, it's crazy. There's so much stuff that it just spits at me. And I'm like, man, how do you know that I would like this? Like, I really did love all of this stuff back then. It's nutty. YouTube, not as much. I'm finding, if I'm doing some random stuff on there, it's playing okay stuff, but I'm like, I don't remember this, or it wasn't my cup of tea or stuff like that. But I mean, as far as adding music I want, it's easy. But how it it knows, like how it literally knows, it is crazy. So why am I not getting any notifications at all here saying Zap subscribe? That's driving me nuts. Because I see my sub points went up, but my activity feed has not changed. Stupid Twitch. And I'm not even using third-party stuff. I'm using the actual Twitch creator dashboard. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Thank you so much, Zap. So for everybody new in the channel for tonight or in general, We're currently making a very basic North American lager. We're going to use this as a vessel for rhubarb and strawberry, and we're going to make a very delicious beer. I've done rhubarb beers twice in the past. Zap will remember from one of them because one she got to name, I don't remember the person's name, but it was, what was it, like Kathy's rhubarb pie or something like that. You named it after a story you said about a lady on your street who would do a whole pile of baking for all of the people in her neighborhood. That was the original rhubarb raspberry. The next one, oh no, I think that was the rhubarb strawberry, so the second one. The first one we made was a rhubarb raspberry, then we made a rhubarb strawberry, and now we're doing a rhubarb strawberry again because I did like it a little better. But this, for step one, is just as basic as it gets for North American beer. This is 8 pounds, 2-row pail. I ran out of 2-row pail after that, so I added a little bit of Pilsner malt in there. Not enough to really change the flavor at all. Not that it even really matters. We just want a very basic, good, flavorful beer that we can use as our vessel for the fruit additive. Kind of like what we're drinking right now was my previous attempt. I did that one off stream. I just wanted to make a nice, easy drinking summer lager, and my girlfriend wanted to do it with me, and she's a little shy about coming on camera, so we just did it, her and I. And being a sole drinker in my house, it takes me a long time to get through a batch. That's why we've had a hiatus from the beer stream. But we're back. I still have way too much beer in the house, but I'm going to a Halloween party next week, so I'm just going to bring a ton of it with me and hopefully offload it there, and make room for the delicious rhubarb strawberry. I got to get some orange juice. I'll be right back, and I'll tell you why when I get back downstairs. One thing a lot of pubs do nowadays when they offer breakfast is they offer mimosas, and they also offer beermosas, which are delicious. The last time we made a batch of beer on stream, I kind of made the beer a little too hoppy. It was still good enough. But I was like, you know what, I'm not really feeling this too much. So I started adding things to it to try and, make the flavor a little better. Then we got to orange juice. All you need to do, add a little splash of orange juice. And then the beer tastes delicious. Something about this specific batch, being as hoppy as it was, takes orange juice very well and makes a pretty unique and delicious end result. I've had Beermosas before. They're good, but they usually use just basic beer to make them, so it ends up tasting like fizzy orange juice. This one ends up tasting better than just fizzy orange juice. It actually has sort of the essence of beer to it still, but kind of has an orange after flavor to it. And it's really hard to explain, but it is absolutely delicious. So just that little tiny splash there went from making it from beer that I was like, this is meh. Not really wanting to drink it too often to actually craving it. It's really, really good. 1999, the year you were born. Man, I know I'm old. I mean, I kind of, I kind of expect that now. I'm the old man. It is what it is. The party I'm going to next week is with all of my older friends. Typically, I have a young friend set and an old friend set. Because, of course, not having children, the older friend set is very hard to schedule time to do anything with. Because, kids. So I typically hang out with my younger friends all the time. But, every once in a while, with 4 months of planning, we can get, the people my age together. And the funny part is it usually turns out to be more of a train wreck than with my younger friends. I mean, also, we can't hold the alcohol like we used to, and we still try to anyway. So usually somebody's getting sick by the end of the night. So we're at 201 degrees. This thing's going to boil any second now, and we can actually get on with it and do some more cool beer things. Like that took what, like 25 minutes to get to a boil? That's the part that sucks the most. This one, pain in the butt. Wait period. Once it's boiling, we add the hops. And typically the boil is 60 minutes. That's sort of the standard across the board. It could be more, people can bring it to a boil for 30 minutes and then bring the temperature down slightly for 10 minutes and then bring it up to a boil again. People do a whole bunch of weird specific things and they claim it all, makes the beer taste better or whatever. And okay, I'll believe you, but I don't really believe you. I do a fast boil, instead of an hour, do maybe 40 minutes, 45. I can't taste the difference. It's faster. It's better. It's no different in flavor, so it's better. All right. One thing to note, if you're making beer at home and you don't have a very large vessel like this boiling stage is the thing you have to watch like a hawk. If it starts boiling, because of the high amount of sugar in the water, you'll get foam and you can actually get a boil over. And that really sucks to clean up. I've had like 2 since I started making beer. And it's like gross, sweet, sugary, sticky, just mess. It sucks. Always pay attention. I'll show you kind of what I mean. It's getting close there. I'm gonna have to tamp it down a little bit, but this'll give you an idea why you gotta watch. Like, look at that. That's just gonna keep getting bigger and bigger until it gets to the top. We don't want to boil over. Do not want to boil over. So I'm just gonna knock it down by using the pump. It's the same idea where you're making pasta or whatever at home and you just stir it and it goes down. I could stir it this way as well, but I'm not. The pump works real good for that. There. So now I'll show you it again. This is just driving the point home that at the boil you gotta watch out. So now it's way lower. Before it was like at the 7 marker at least, working its way up. Now it's back down to 6. So now we're gonna add some hops. So we've got our handy dandy hop basket here. You don't technically have to use this. You can pour hops directly in there. It's not going to change the flavor or anything. It's just there's going to be more particulate, so your beer might not be as clear. So by having this, you know, no big lumpies get in there, just makes it look a little cleaner at the end of the day. Flavor is still going to be exactly the same. So that goes in. For this, we're using some Mount Hood hops. This is kind of more of a general purpose kind of hop. A lot of beers that people make use, you know, about 2 ounces of hops. We're only using 1 because we don't want this to be super hoppy. So we're putting 1 ounce in now, and these are called boiling hops. The other kind of hops are called finishing hops. A boil hop is what we use to give it that flavor. You know, we all know what the hoppy flavor is in beer. The finishing hops are for aroma and a little bit on the mouthfeel side of things. So it's not the sort of in-depth flavor at that point. It's kind of just an aroma. For that, we're going to use something called Cascade hops. If you've had an IPA in your life, you've had Cascade hops. So they're a very strong citrus-forward hop. I don't want to make my beer very hoppy, so that's why we're going to use some Cascade at the finishing stage, because, you know, that citrusy, hoppy smell is what I'm trying to establish here. I kind of want that little bit of aroma, and I want it to be just a smidge on the bitter side, because bitter and tart go together very well. So that's why they have grapefruit IPAs and things like that, because, you know, you add that little bit of tartness to it, and it kind of takes away from the bitterness, and it's a little more cohesive. So we're going to try and do that because we'll be putting rhubarb into this. And if you haven't had rhubarb before, rhubarb is a very bitter vegetable. Yeah, it's a vegetable. And then the strawberry is where the sweetness comes from. So I want the rhubarb to kind of interact with the bitterness of the hops, and then I kind of want the sweet taste of strawberries in there too. This is our second attempt. I shouldn't say attempt, because attempt usually means failure. This is our second go around of this, and I'm trying to improve further. So I'm doing purposely the little bit of sort of extra bitterness, but not a lot of bitterness, just that little extra. And then I'm adding double the strawberries this time. I really want that strawberry taste to kind of get in there. I want that to be sort of right in the front of the taste of the beer, and I want it to trail into the rhubarb, so you taste the strawberry and then get that kind of rhubarby tartness at the end, with that little bit of bitterness to remind you that you're still drinking beer. And that's why I like this Beermosa type thing, is with the hoppy beer and the orange juice, you get reminded that you're not just drinking orange juice. There's that little bit of beer in the background that kind of grounds you. You're the rhubarb. I didn't know you'd be back today to game. I would have scheduled my beer day until for yesterday instead, because I ended up playing Overwatch all by myself all night last night. So that was a little boring. Could have done the beer yesterday, and then we could have gamed tonight. But I'm going to game after this. I mean, it sucks I'm going to have to do cleanup after this, because that takes freaking forever. But I will be playing tonight. I've been digging playing May the last 2 days a little bit. It's been pretty fun. You were gone for my shitty Genji moment, which was the best. So I'm a very crappy Genji. And I was playing it 2 days ago with Scraffy and Matt. And we started a round, and I squared off against another Genji, a 1v1. and I beat the other Genji, and he just started sounding off. It was so funny. He was insulting me, you know, all of this stuff. And it was hilarious. And then I actually ended up doing pretty good overall at that game. And then at the very end, I said, "Oh, well, you know, I'm just a beginner Genji or whatever." And he's like, "Fuck you." And I'm like, "Yes." It was so good. This guy was so angry. It was just the best. But I'm definitely a better Mei than a Genji when it comes to playing characters I'm not used to. Honestly, I'm not feeling Soldier right now, which is crazy. I was playing a little bit on my lunch break today, and I'm not getting the damage as Soldier as I did in Overwatch 1. I don't know what's changed, but I'm just not, maybe as higher bullet drop off now or whatever, and I'm not getting close enough, but I am not getting a ton of damage anymore. So I've kind of put him to rest a little bit. I'm using Sojourn, more Torb. May's fun, even though I'm not great with her yet. And then, of course, for tanking, Orisa and Monkey. I've started getting pretty good with Monkey, doing some diving with that. And then, obviously, Moira for Elin. But this isn't a Discord or a Overwatch stream. It's a beer stream. I'm going to pay attention. Can't get distracted. Hey Google, set a timer for 25 minutes.
25 minutes, starting now.
So the smell of the beer and stuff now is it went from a very sweet bread-like smell to now it kind of has that little bit of a hoppy aroma when you're boiling and adding the hops, which hopefully it doesn't fog up the camera too much. You can kind of see the green sludge in there. It's kind of got a little bit of an acidic kind of smell to it now, which is okay. That's what we're expecting. Put the glove on to use the pump because, of course, we're pumping super hot boiling liquid, so it hurts your hands. I'm surprised Brewzilla hasn't made an insulated tube you can buy yet for these things. All right, 5:30. We're getting there. Hey Google, set a timer for 12 minutes.
Second timer for 12 minutes, starting now.
So the reason why I'm setting two timers here is the original one is to say when we're done our boil, and we're going to start cooling things off. And the second timer I just set was kind of when there's 10 minutes-ish left. I'm going to add something called a Irish moss tablet, which all it does is it helps sort of remove the sort of heavy particulate of the grain with the liquid. And it's just for clarity. So it doesn't change the flavor of the beer at all. It just makes the final product look a little nicer. When you're doing homebrew, you know, you don't really have quite the level of filtration that fancy breweries have. So you kind of get a little bit of, little parlor tricks here and there to make the beer look a lot better and not like Uncle Jerry's bathtub beer he's made in 1985. We're shaking, Clint. Nice to see you. We're beer making. So for those of you, if you're interested in Irish Moss Tablet, looks like that. Just dissolve straight up into the beer. I'm doing great, buddy. How are you? Making some delicious, delicious beer. What else do we do? Oh, then at the same time as adding the Irish Moss Tablet, we're going to add a little bit of Cascade hops just to give it kind of that citrus aroma right on the, tail end of the beer. Have you been playing any games lately, Glenn? What's your game of the week? Always Overwatch. Oh, I remember seeing that game on Steam. One of the coolest things of growing up, I'm an 80s baby, but, being old enough really, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. In 1986, I got a normal Nintendo, and I was like 3.5, 4 years old, and I was playing normal Nintendo long ago. But in the 90s sort of was my heyday of original video gaming, and I still very much remember after the Nintendo 64 came out, my stepbrothers and I playing WCW versus NWO World Tour, which was the first mind-blowing wrestling game. We played that game so much, it was absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, same sort of time period as GoldenEye 007. We played a ton of 4-player deathmatch in GoldenEye, but man, WCW versus NWO No Mercy was like the coolest friggin' game. I wasn't even really a wrestling fan. I'm still not a wrestling fan, but I like the games and stuff. And that game was just so friggin' fun. And then, they did a couple more revisions and ended up with WWE No Mercy, where you could create your own character and everything like that. And man, those were the friggin' heydays, man. No Mercy was just ridiculous how good that was. I remember in college, for like 2 weeks straight, our college professor, he was super sick. So he was canceling his classes, but he would never cancel them in advance. We'd literally go to his class and he'd have a note on the door saying class canceled today. So we would go to my buddy's house, which was like 2 blocks from the college, and we'd play like WWE No Mercy for the next 2 hours in between classes. And it was so fun. The old school days. And then back then, my mom started dating my now stepdad, and he had 2 kids, and they had a Nintendo 64 as well. So we had 2 Nintendo 64s. So what my stepbrother and I, we used to do is we would hook up both our N64s to 2 TVs side by side, and we play Super Mario 64 and have races to see who can get to these stars first. And that is a lot of fun. Now you can, see like Mizkif and Ludwig and all those guys on Twitch doing speed runs of Super Mario 64. But we were doing that like back way before Twitch was even a thing. If we would have known that got viewers, I tell you. I mean, I like when I grew up and everything, but there's definitely a few lost opportunities. Like, I was really, really good at Battlefield 1942 when that was a thing. And if esports and Twitch were a thing back then, I would be like a Shroud. Like, I played that game so much and I was so good at that game. I would totally friggin' get a ton of popularity for playing that game. But of course, now I'm past my prime, I'm old, I'm washed up. I'm not so good at video games anymore, so I'm okay, but not good enough to pull an audience. Holy man! Jizzerson! Holy man! Long time no see. Welcome, my friend. Steele, if you're still there, Zap. Jizzerson was one of the original OGs of Blackwake. Way, way back in the day, before Scraffy, before Verir, there was a group of us, Siddhartha, Achilles, 420, Jizzerson. We were the originals, the original sweaty team way back when. It's a little bit of Blackwake history for you. Yeah, I still keep tabs of Achilles. I don't know what happened to 420. Oddly enough, Siddhartha found me in my stream about maybe 3 months ago, and then he just disappeared again. Wizard, I lost track of. His mom still works at the same place I work, but I didn't ask her recently what he's doing. But that's out of the original oldies. That's all I kept in contact with. I mean, I don't know if you were around when Scraffy and Verir came into the scene or not, but I still talk with them a lot. I don't know if there's anybody else of the old group. There's some people in here that are former Blackwake players, but they were kind of the new bloods. Oh, Wizard did? How's he doing? How's he doing? I found that was so wild how we lived in the same town and his mom works at the same place I work. That was mind-blowing, man. Like, what are the odds of all of that stuff? All right, our numbers are getting up. We're up to 8. It's crazy, I mean, it's my fault. I haven't beer streamed in, 3 months or so. So, it's so weird on Twitch that if you don't do something frequently, you just have to start all over again. But it's really cool to see that we got 8 here so far, which I don't consider that too bad at all. I mean, I was reading. I can't remember who referenced it. I don't know if it's Moist Critical or Ludwig that if you've got, I think, over 20 viewers, you're in the top 1% of Twitch, or top 3%, I think it was. Yeah, top 3. And then if you have over 100, you're in the top 1%. It's crazy. Your thought of graphics N64 had a lot of cool things going for it. I mean, one, the hype. I had Super Nintendo, I had normal Nintendo, all of those beforehand, and they were hyped up pretty good. But when the N64 dropped, the hype was insane. My poor mom waited in line forever and spent I think $300, and this is like what, 1996? No, 1990. Yeah, it could have been 96. I wonder if it's N64 related. I think it's. Yeah, 1996. So my mom spent an extra like $300 in 1996 to get me an N64 from this one place that had stock. Luckily, just before Christmas, another place got stock, so she was able to return it and get it. But she actually waited in line for me and paid way over asking for it. But the hype, the controller was really cool too with the N64. Actually having that little joystick, that threw a lot of people off, including myself, when that was released, because I was used to a D-pad. Everything had D-pads. But that was like the first like joystick based thing. So that was really cool. The graphics back then had a really good feel to them. I mean, you see a lot of like indie games these days that they either go retro, so like 8 or 16-bit, or they reference the N64 style graphics. So there we go. Stop. So I think, even in today's games, you're still getting sort of the essence of an N64 in a lot of the sort of upbeat indie games. All right. So we're going to add a little bit of what we call finishing hops. This is more so for smell and sort of the other sensations that are not taste. Where did I put my scissors? That's silly. Oh, they're there. These are Cascade hops. If you've had an IPA, you've had Cascade hops. Very citrusy. We don't want to make this beer too bitter, so that's why we're adding it at the finishing stage rather than the boiling stage. And we're adding just under a half an ounce of those. And then what we're doing now is we're going to add the Irish moss tablet, which does nothing more than increase the clarity of our beer so it looks a little more professional. I never was really a big PlayStation fan. Now, I have been exposed to it. My stepbrothers got PlayStations, but by then I was actually into PC gaming, so I didn't really get to play PlayStation too much. I every once in a while I would go downstairs and play it with them. I remember playing Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1 all the way through, some racing games, and sometimes we would do like co-op beat-em-ups or whatever. There's one co-op beat-em-up my stepbrother and I used to play all the time on the PlayStation, and I can't remember what it is. I can see the game in my head, but I don't know what it was. It wasn't Streets of Rage or anything mainstream like that. It was something else, but we played a friggin' shit ton of that way back in the day. I don't know what it's called. I didn't remember what it is. And yes, Jizzerson, Battlefield 1942, best Battlefield, hands down. Battlefield 2, strong second. Desert Combat, the mod for Battlefield 1942, I'm going to consider that as a standalone game. That's a very strong third. That's hot. Wear your glove, idiot. All I'm doing is just mixing the beer around, make sure we get all that flavor and stuff distributed through the liquid. Yeah, I mean, all the games we play today are really they draw upon the classics. Like I can't really think of anything super unique today that wasn't really, at least in essence, a game 20 years ago. Really. Yeah, Jizzers, I had at least 1,000 hours in it too. Now I wasn't in sixth grade. I was in college at the time, but like my life literally was the classes I was taking. They started very early. They started at like 7:30, so I would get up at 6. I would get to class, do my classes. They were done early, maybe 1 o'clock. I would come home, do homework for 2 hours or so, and then I would play Battlefield until like 11 at night. That was like every day. That was my life through college. There was a lot of good FPSs, but Battlefield really caught me because of the vehicles. Like that was a new concept. I think Operation Flashpoint was like the first game that implemented vehicles as an FPS. I mean, Glenn mentions Call of Duty. I remember playing the campaign of Call of Duty 1 on my computer, and my mind was friggin' blown. Like, seriously, the story in Call of Duty 1 and experiencing that for the first time, like, I still remember, like, being in a Jeep or whatever during, like, a live cutscene that you're interacting with and having explosions and everything. It was crazy, man. It was such a um, good experience. It was so ridiculous. Refresh my memory as to what RTCW was. It's in my mind. I know what that acronym. I've seen that acronym before. I just can't remember. Oh yeah. Of course. I actually liked Return of Castle Wolfenstein multiplayer. I played that quite a bit too. I vaguely remember. Wasn't the multiplayer for Return to Castle Wolfenstein free to play? Or were you able to pirate it back then and you do it as free to play? I'm pretty sure it was just straight up free. The multiplayer portion was free to try and get people to buy the campaign or whatever. I played a lot of that. But I mean, my first, like, when I first got into PC gaming, Diablo was like my game. That's what really got me into PC gaming. Was using my old dial-up modem, connecting to BattleNet, and playing Diablo online. It was absolutely insane. And then playing Tribes was my first sort of introduction to kind of large-scale multiplayer competition. Um, it's dating me. I mean, that makes me feel really old. But I remember playing Tribes, and maybe you played like Tribes 3 or whatever before, so you kind of know what I'm talking about. But back then, there's a sniper rifle in the game, which was a laser, and it would never kill a person in one shot, even if it was a headshot. It was always two. So back then, when we were all on dial-up, I was lucky enough to have a second phone line in my house, and my friend was too. So we would literally talk on the phone on one phone line and be playing this game on our other on the same team. And we would, and back then there was no like text chat or anything really. Um, we would be talking on the phone, and we would be like, "Hey, you see that guy up in the top left corner standing on that tower? Like on the count of 3, let's both shoot him with the sniper rifle." So we go 1, 2, 3, and we both fire at the same time. And of course, the guy would drop dead because it always took 2 shots to kill him. But we would do it at the exact same time, so he couldn't run away. He would just go bam, dead. People would get so mad in that game. Like we would see forum postings about us. Um, you know, people complaining about us, saying we're cheating and stuff like that. But we were just really on the telephone. It was so fun. God, I miss those days. And yeah, I mean, you're playing the remastered Diablo 2, but it's the same thing. I played Diablo 2 when it first came out, way back when. Now I'm trying to remember. I think that was maybe just before 2000. No, it wasn't 2000. Man, I'm almost nailing my dates. Usually I'm terrible with dates. Beer is smelling delicious. We're almost done. Hey Google, how long left on my timer?
T minus 58 seconds.
58 seconds. All right, let's kill.
Second timer for 58 seconds. And that's starting
No,
now.
I didn't say that, Google. Hey Google, stop all timers. Good. All right. So now what we're doing is we're going to remove that hot basket. We've taken all the heat off. The goal now is to get the liquid.
You're both canceled.
Thank you. To get the liquid down to 80 degrees Fahrenheit as fast as we can. Right now, we have what's called, oh my goodness, why am I drawing a blank? Now I'm going to have to Google it. I want to call it trip. That's not right. It's not the mash, because we've done that. There's a word for it, and I'm drawing a blank here. I know, right? It's dumb sometimes. Anyway, so right now we basically have non-alcoholic beer that's flat. Not the most appealing thing in the world. But what we need to do is we need to get the temperature down as fast as we can, because this is the most crucial part in beer making. If you've had gross tasting skunky beer before, it's because bacteria was involved. During the boil stage, it's no problem, which reminds me, before it stops boiling, we need to put our chiller in, which cools the beer off. The reason we need to put this in before it stops boiling is because we need to burn off any bad bacteria on the device. Anyway, as I was saying, this is the most important part because we have to worry about bacteria. Anything before and including the boil time, you don't need to worry about cleanliness that much. I mean, you need to make sure there's not like mung or gross things on there, but you don't really have to worry about bacteria because a boil kills off any bacteria that's happening. What's happening now is we're going to cool the beer off below boiling. So anything that's introduced to the beer at this point has to be a very sterile, bacteria-free item. Otherwise, it could really make your beer taste awful and give you a lot of off flavorings in there, which we don't want. We want good tasting stuff. So I forgot what I should have done about maybe 3 or 4 minutes ago is put the chiller in just to make sure there's nothing bad. Now, it was still boiling, just to turn the temperature off, or the burner off, so I'm kind of turning the burner back on. Make sure it gets a good solid boil for 2 minutes or so. Make sure any bacteria on the device is gone, and then we'll start cooling it off. What the item is I put in is called a chiller. Basically what I'm going to do is hook up some hoses to the sink and pump cold water. The cold water comes in, goes around the metal chiller, of course makes it kind of cool, kind of starts helping cool the beer off, and then all of the extra water comes out the other side and goes back into the sink. So we're doing a little bit of a closed system there. If you're using a brew pot at this point, you would basically fill your sink up with ice and water and put the pot in the ice and water to try and cool it down quite a bit. But since we have a fancy device with fancy things, we're going to use a chiller system so we don't have to worry about having ice. Yeah, we got a nice rolling boil still, so we don't need to worry about bacteria getting in. So now we can focus on our tubes. We were too busy talking about video games, I forgot what I was doing. I'm just gonna go move this in the other room, get it out of our way. So we can have a little room to get the chiller set up. So I Frankensteined this little system here where I can utilize my sink to pump water. I just have to remember where I put my darn little attachments. The answer is I left it right on the thing. Okay, so it goes from the sink to one end. Then we take another hose. We take the wastewater that goes out the one side and the other side. And we're going to pump that back into the sink. I'm losing control of all of my goodies here. Holy man. Hopefully it's in the other room. I usually put something on this tube here to hold it in place. But I don't know what I did with my little clip, so we'll just have to pay good attention here to make sure this doesn't get away from us. Oh, big brain play. Just put it through there and then it can't escape. All right, so now we're adding some water. So as I said, what this is doing is pumping cold water through the one side, and on the other side, that warm water that was cold before it went in is coming out the other side there. Trying to brace things up here really well. Yeah. We're golden, baby. Women don't find you handsome, at least they'll find you handy. Let's take a peek here and see what we've got brewing. So, there's the beer. We have cold water going in there, swirling around, getting all hot, coming out that side, coming out the sink there. Nice closed cooling system. How much beer can you make in one pot? Well, most of the time when you're doing sort of an at-home kit, you can do 5 or 6 gallons of beer. What is it? It's like 3.89 liters per gallon, per US gallon, I think. So that's like 22 and a half, 23 liters of beer. So pretty much what it comes down to is I get about 55 bottles of beer. If I don't add fruit or anything like that to the beer, if I'm just making a nice, delicious, plain old beer, it costs under $30 Canadian in ingredients to do. If I really scrimped and made a very basic beer, I could make 55 bottles for about $25. So not very expensive at all. I like to add fruit and other additives to my beer, so it just increases the cost based on the fruit. So in this case, the rhubarb that we're going to use in this beer, I don't have any downstairs, it's upstairs. I pick for free. Where the cabin is, there's just boatloads of rhubarb and it's just go pick it. So that didn't cost me anything extra, and I'm using about a kilogram of strawberries, which cost me about $10. So this particular batch of beer is going to cost me about $40. Typically when I do fruit beer, my overall cost is about $50 for 55 bottles. So still way better in a liquor store. I mean, I don't know what it is in the States where you are. I know beer in the US, especially microbrew, isn't as cheap as it used to be. But like up here, if you want a 24 pack of Budweiser or whatever, you're paying like 40 something bucks for 24 beer of just shitty Budweiser. So, I can make 55 bottles of really cool, tasty lager for $25, or I can make something fun that's like a fruit beer or whatever for like $40, $45. So it's definitely, pretty cheap, all things considered. So I'm just going to turn the pump on here, circulate some of the liquids. We don't need the hops in here anymore. I'm going to kind of filter that out. I'm on like my third beer from beer making, so I got to go use the washroom. I'll be right back. We're just draining the residual water out of the hops. We're going to remove that. And we're cooling things down to 80 degrees to get this in the fermenter. Whew. Man, did I ever have to pee bad. Holy shit. All right. So we've got our nice hop sludge. We're going to take out of there. Don't need that anymore. We're cooling things down at a pretty healthy rate. It's just a waiting game. So what the next steps are now is after this hits close to 80 degrees, we're going to put the liquid in a fermenter, and then we're going to add yeast. The yeast over the next 5 to 7 days will interact with the sugar that's in sort of the beer mixture, and that's what produces alcohol. Yeast plus sugar equals no sugar, but alcohol and CO2 as a byproduct. So it's going to consume the sugar in the beer, so it won't be sweet anymore, and it's going to give us alcohol as a byproduct. And CO2. During the fermentation stage, we don't want the CO2, so I put an airlock in the fermenter so the CO2 bubbles out and gets out of the beer. We use an airlock because we don't want bad bacteria getting in. We only want to expel the CO2. And then after about 5 to 7 days, I'm going to take rhubarb and strawberry, put it in a blender, make a nice little puree, and then I'm going to boil it. Why do I boil it? Because anything that touches the beer, now that it's cooling down, we have to make sure it has no bacteria in it. So picked rhubarb and picked strawberries, there'll be bacteria on it 100%. So we just boil it, make sure all of that goes away, and then we add it to like a grain sock, like kind of like a muslin bag, a filter, and it'll sit in the fermenter for another 3 or 4 days. We want to get that rhubarb and that strawberry flavor out of the fruit and into the beer. Any residual yeast that's in the beer will start attacking the sugars in the rhubarb and strawberry. That's why we add a lot, is so the yeast gets everything it wants and leaves some of that flavor alone, so we can have a nice flavorful beer. And then after that wait period is over, we'll do bottling. So bottling, we'll be putting the beer in a bucket there, and then adding a little bit of corn sugar. We add a little bit of corn sugar because we want any residual yeast in the beer to reactivate itself, because in this stage, we want to harness that CO2. So I do something called natural carbonization. So you can see my homemade beer here. There's still head and stuff on top. I didn't add CO2 to this at all. I used the byproduct that yeast and sugar make, alcohol and CO2, to carbonate it for me. So when I bottle the beer, I add that little bit of sugar, and then I bottle it and put it in a room, and then the yeast wakes up one more time, attacks that sugar, makes CO2, and that's what makes my beer nice and fizzy. It takes a little longer. When you're at a brewery, they use CO2 injectors because natural carbonization is a little more work and stuff, and it takes a little more time. So when breweries make beer and such, they get the liquid into the vat right after it's done fermenting, and then they just pump CO2 in because it takes way less time. And it's a little more controlled. It's, less room for error and stuff. I could do the same thing. I could, buy a keg and buy a CO2 can and regulators and all that. But to me, just adding a little bit of corn sugar and putting it in bottles is not much work. So that's kind of how I go. Natural carbonization is a little bit of a lost art. Not a lot of people still do it. But I'm one of those guys. So this is our fermenter here. This is where the beer will end up with the yeast to have a little bit of a party. Show everybody what's going on here. Nothing super exciting, but that's what beer looks like before it's really beer. We're sitting at just about 5 gallons of beer. I'm probably going to add just a little trail of water in there. I just want to get it a little higher. Actually, no, I don't. I lied. We're going to be adding a full kilogram of strawberries and about 4 or 5 pounds. I guess I should use kilograms too. About maybe just under 2 kilograms of rhubarb to it. So that's actually going to increase the volume substantially in the fermenter. So maybe I don't want to do that. just mixing things around a little bit. It'll decrease the stats, or the temp a bit. We're down to about 100 degrees now. We're getting there. Come on, temperature. Down to 95. We're getting there. At least this isn't as long as it takes to bring the thing to a boil, which is like 30 minutes of just waiting. Does anybody have any more beer questions? Ah, did I just close? Why did I close my browser? Why did my browser just close? I didn't do it. (92 degrees). We're getting there. Lost your gallbladder. Dude, that sucks. Are you doing DJing still? You were a DJ, right? That's what you did before? Sometimes? Was DJing your full-time job at one point, or were you always moonlighting? Oh, Mr. Big Entrepreneur Man selling stuff on the internet. No, I'm just kidding. Good for you. I mean, how some people can do that is just the amount of risk for something like that is something I could never do. Like, I have nothing but friggin' kudos to people, you know, that you can, that's what you do. Like, I'm always about, you know, the sort of, I wouldn't say corporate job, but, you know, like the government backed job or whatever, because, you know, security and everything is huge to me. But I also never make as much money as I probably could, because I value like that cushy security more than anything. That's really good on you. Hopefully you do pretty well at it. Make some dollar bills. We are almost done. So that's going to hit 80 in the not too distant future. Whoa, Cure, yeah, Cure, you might remember Jizzers. He's super old school like me. What we're doing now is we're adding a little one step to the fermenter. What one step is like OxyClean. Because as I said, after the boil, everything that touches the beer has to be sanitary. We don't want any extra bacteria in here. We want it to taste delicious. So I'm just going to put some water in here. We swirl this around. Make sure things are nice and clean. All right, so we got a little bit of the sanitizer in here. We'll let that swirl around. What we'll also do is we do need to transfer the beer from this to that. So we need some hosing to do that. We're going to slap this guy in the sanitization solution, because anything that touches the beer has to be sanitary. What do we got going on here? 91 degrees. We'll turn the pump on, see what our actual temperature is. Man, I wish... So at a brewery, there's always the assistant brewmaster. And one would think, oh, that's an awesome job. You know, you can get to train under the brewmaster and make beer and stuff. Ultimately, the assistant brewmaster gets a little bit of knowledge, but most of the time, they're responsible for the cleanup. I need an assistant brewmaster. The cleanup sucks, because after I end stream, it's going to take me like a half hour to clean all this stuff. We're getting there, we're so close. I gotta trick a friend into helping me and be like, oh, do you want to be my assistant brewmaster? Then I just get them to clean everything. We're almost there. I would say probably in about 5 minutes, we get to transfer things over. I'll explain what I'm doing, and then whoever is left at the end of the stream will help get to name the beer. We are so close. 87 degrees. We are right there. Right there. Oh. Sent so much cold water through here, the friggin' tube came off. I haven't had that before. But that's fine. That's why we do it in the sink. Probably had the pressure a little high. Alright. Just gonna go dump all this water out, and we're transferring. Hells, yes, we're almost done, friends. Hook the tube up. Nothing crazy going on here. Checking the temperature one more time. 84, close enough. It's going to get a little colder as we transfer things anyway. Shut the water off. As I recall, we undo this first. Water cycle through. So. I don't think back pressure is the thing here. Nope, we're good. I remember, yeah, because the water's still coming out the other side. I remember once I did this the opposite way, and I took the coming out line off first, and then the water got backed up this way and then came out the other side anyway and just made a mess all over the floor. Plumbing is no joke, my friends. All right. Got that. Got that. Clearly don't have as much room in here as I would like. Maybe another sink. You know, when I buy my new house, which is coming up, hopefully I'm going to actually really design a beer making area. This is just an actual kitchen that I decided was going to be what I use to make beer, but I'm going to make an actual beer making area in the new house, which is going to be so sweet when the time comes. So now we're just transferring the beer over, which I'll show you what's going on. Nothing fancy, just going from there, there, and then we are at the point where we get to pitch the yeast, seal it up, and we're done for now. So, this is at the end of the stream. As I said, for anybody who's left, subscribers get first choice, but if there's no subscribers, that's fine too. But whoever's left gets to come up with a name for the beer. So if you have a name in mind or want to be a part of this, just say something in chat, and then I'll do a random number generator, and whoever wins gets to pick the name of the beer, and I will honor it. Even with people who aren't on Twitch or anything like that, family members, whatever, when they ask what the beer's called, I'll tell them what your name is, or what the beer's name is based on what you say. You can hold me to that. We've had some interesting names, like I think Fidel called one like Astronaut Space Cum or something like that. We've had some sentimental ones. Zap called one of the rhubarb beers we made named it after Patty. That was it, Patty's Pie. A lady in her neighborhood who used to bake for everybody in her neighborhood, and she would make rhubarb pie. There's been other things like my friend Druid Peak was in here, and we asked his son to name the beer. And he said something, and I'm like, oh, I thought it would be, like pee-pee poo-poo or something like that. And he says, no, I'm a responsible adult, which was hilarious. So that's what I call the beer, the I'm a responsible adult sour. So there's lots of fun things, lots of fun names. If you got a name, got some ideas, speak up now. There we go. Get all that goodness out of the tube. Close her off. Not spill everywhere would be good. How many gallons? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4.5. So we're at 4.5 gallons. We really want 5 at least, even though we're adding additives. So I'm just gonna go pour a little water in here, and then we're gonna call her a day. This is a sterilized bucket that has the water, because as I said, everything that touches the beer needs to be sterile. We'll just add a little bit of a top up. We don't have to worry about it diluting the flavor of the beer at all. We're not really adding that much water. All right, where's my yeast? Here it is. We've got some just basic California lager yeast. Not doing anything crazy here. In it goes. We will grab our sterilization agent. Make sure the lid is nice and sterile. On it goes. We will find a little stopper in my box of goodies. Hello? Little stopper. Where are you? There we go. Oh, there it is. Make sure that is nice and sterile as well. In it goes there. Then this is what we call an airlock. We're going to make sure that is nice and sterile. And then we're going to fill it with sterilizer. So what happens here is CO2 will come out, go into the liquid, move the cap up a little bit, bubble and come out, but because this is sterile liquid, it's stopping anything bad from coming back in. So we don't have to worry about bacteria or air getting into the beer. And that's all, guys. We are done. Nobody has a name for the beer. I'll have to think of it on my own. But I thank everybody for tuning in and watching. Beer streams are always so fun. We had 8, which is pretty good for me not doing this in a while. Usually we have 20 when I'm on a consistent schedule, and I will try my best to drink as much as I can so we can do this again sooner than later. But you know, it's always cool when I look at the stream results after this, and we have like, typically on this, I get like 30 to 40 unique viewers pass through. Maybe not all at once, but you know, I get like 40 people who come through, which is really awesome. When I usually play Overwatch and stuff like that, I get maybe, I don't know, 5 or so. So these streams are always my favorite. And I thank everybody for stopping by and saying hi and checking it out. Even if I'm just background noise, that's cool. I just, it's fun. It's nice. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thank you, Cure. Thanks, Jizzers. Catch everybody later.